chairman asked you if you'd spoken to a number of people in the process of your investigation. Former IRS Commissioner Schulman, you said no. Former acting IRS Commissioner Mr. Miller, you said no. And then Sarah Hall Ingram, you said yes. Who is she?
Sarah Hall Ingram runs the Affordable Care Act operations within the IRS, and I speak to her on an ongoing basis as part of my responsibility to engage with my senior leadership team on the ongoing operations of the IRS.
What was her role during this period of time, during the period of time in the tax exempt?
It's a good question, and that's one that we're looking at, and I'll do my best to explain it right now. Ms. Ingram was the commissioner of the tax-exempt government entities organization leading into when these events occurred. So the IG report starts to surface issues in and around early, let's say March 2010 is when this fact pattern begins on the IG timeline. It's my understanding that Ms. Ingram served as the commissioner of tax-exempt, government-exempt organizations, which is a level above the exempt organizations unit, and that org chart is in my report. And she served in that capacity until somewhere around the spring or summer of 2010.
So there was an overlap.
So there's an overlap. At that point in time, she moved over and was detailed over to begin her work in running the Affordable Care Act.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please have a seat and let the record reflect that all witnesses answered in the affirmative. Since I understand that there will only be one opening statement for all three of you, given by Inspector General, we will not observe their 5 minutes. Take the time reasonably you need. You're their effectively only witness. And Mr. McCarthy, welcome back. I know that for many years you looked from this side of the dais for Mr. Towns and others, and you wondered what it would be like on that side. Today you find out.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I look forward to it.
Thank you. The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Issa, Ranking Member Cummings, and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to address specific issues that have been raised related to our report published May 14th, 2013 on inappropriate criteria used by the Internal Revenue Service to identify tax-exempt applications for review. Our report included three key findings. First, that the Internal Revenue Service used inappropriate criteria that identified for review organizations applying for tax-exempt status based upon their names or policy positions rather than on tax-exempt law and Treasury regulations. Second, that the cases that the IRS referred for review as potential political cases experienced delays. And third, the IRS made unnecessary and burdensome requests for information. On May 10th, 2013, at an American Bar Association conference held in Washington, D.C., Lois Lerner, the director of exempt organizations for the IRS at the time, stated, quote, "Instead of referring to the cases as advocacy cases, they actually used case names on this list. They, the determinations unit in Cincinnati, Ohio, used names like Tea Party or Patriots, and they selected cases simply because the applications had those names in the title. That was wrong, that was absolutely incorrect, insensitive, and inappropriate," end of quote. She also stated that some cases were delayed and unnecessary questions were asked, confirming the three key findings of our report. The storyline based on Ms. Lerner's presentation was that the IRS had apologized for inappropriately targeting conservative organizations. Ms. Lerner made her statements on May 10th, 2013, before our audit was completed and issued on May 14th, 2013. It has been asserted that TICTA concluded that the IRS inappropriately targeted conservative organizations. However, that narrative is based upon Ms. Lerner's statements, not on TICTA's conclusions. It is imperative for me to emphasize that our audit never labeled groups as conservative or liberal. TICTA reviewed the process used by the IRS from May 2010 through May 2012 to screen cases for potential political campaign intervention. In other words, advocating for or against a candidate running for political office. As of the end of May 2012, the IRS provided TIGTA a list of 298 organizations that the IRS, had selected for further scrutiny. The report focuses on the terms, quote, Tea Party, Patriots, and 9/12, unquote, is that the IRS provided us a document at the beginning of our audit that showed these were the terms they used to select the potential political cases. I submit for the record a document that the IRS provided to my organization on May 17th, 2012, while we were still in the planning phase of our audit. This document is purported to be the language used in the Be on the Lookout, otherwise known as BOLO listing, over time to describe potential political cases. We focused our audit on the BOLO entries shown in this document precisely because the IRS represented that these were the criteria relevant to potential political cases. Furthermore, the IRS provided us additional names and policy positions that were used to select cases, including Patriots and 9/12. The scope of our audit included the process the IRS used to review applications for tax exemption from groups potentially involved in political campaign intervention. During the audit, our understanding was that the other BOLO entries were not used to select cases for this type of specialized review. As new information emerges, we are continuing to review whether this is accurate. In interviews, emails, and documents, we found repeated discussions of the use of Tea Party and other related criteria described in our audit report. New documents from July 2010 listing the term, quote, progressive, unquote, but noting that progressive are not considered Tea Parties, were provided to TIGTA last week on July 9th, 2013. They were not provided during our audit, even though similar documents that quote Tea Party, unquote, but not progressive were. I am very disturbed that these documents were not provided to our auditors at the outset, and we are currently reviewing this issue. To follow up on the information that other terms like quote progressive and occupy, unquote, appeared in various sections of the BOLO list, we conducted additional analyses to provide you, members of Congress, with the data that we have due to the interest in this issue. However, we do not have full audit findings on the use of these other criteria. With respect to the 298 cases that the IRS selected for political review, as of the end of May 2012, 3 have the word progressive in the organization's name. Another 4 were used, quote, progress, unquote. None of the 298 cases selected by the IRS as of May 2012 used the name Occupy.
Plus whatever else I might need. It is very good to be here. I want to thank the Attorney General for the good work he does. I know he is aided with great skill by 2 former Schumer employees who work for you, Elliot Williams, who's been gone for a while, and Brian Fallon, who we miss very much and is doing a good job for you. That's our comment.
Thank you, Senator Schumer.
Okay.
The president, to his credit, agrees that this is a terrible abuse. He called the IRS scandal intolerable and inexcusable, and he called for those guilty of this misconduct to be held accountable. But when your department was asked to step in and investigate, no one has been held accountable for this abuse. In fact, your department installed a political donor of the president's to lead the investigation. Appointing a political donor to investigate a political activity I think, calls the entire investigation into question. And I can't imagine how this would be designed to instill public confidence in the investigation. Now, FBI Director Comey, to his credit, said this investigation was an important one for his agency. Now, though, it's been publicly reported that the department will not pursue criminal charges against any IRS official, even though the FBI's investigation has not yet been concluded. And shockingly, the department made this decision, if it's true, and you can certainly confirm it or refute it if it's not. They made this decision without even talking to Catherine Engelbrecht. I talked to her yesterday. She verified she has not heard a word from the Department of Justice or the FBI. So I would like to know, General Holder, what you have to say to Ms. Engelbrecht and other Americans who spent thousands of dollars defending themselves against harassment by the Internal Revenue Service for daring to exercise their constitutional right to participate in the political process. And I'd like to ask you whether you will agree to make sure that your department consults personally with every victim of this type of intimidation by the federal government. And if you can tell us what kind of accountability can the American people expect from this abuse of power?
Well, what I would say is, first off, that I don't remember the exact words that I used, but I think shortly after the president made the statements that you made, I expressed similar concerns, and I was the one who actually ordered the investigation into these matters. They are being handled by the Criminal Division in the Justice Department, the Civil Rights Division in the Justice Department, the Treasury Inspector General, and in the FBI, as you indicated. This is a matter that is an open inquiry. The matter is still going on. Press reports, I think what you're referring to with regard to how the case is ultimately going to be decided is a press report. I can tell you that the reporters who have made those assertions are not people privy to what is actually going on in the investigation. It is something, as I said, that is open. The investigation is proceeding.
So is there still a potential for criminal charges to be brought in connection with the investigation since it has not been concluded?
Well, I mean, obviously all the options that we have are on the table given the fact that there has not been a determination either to bring charges or to decline the case.
Well, don't you think it's the responsibility of the department to actually contact the people with the most information about what exactly happened, like this victim of this abuse of power, like Catherine Engelbrecht?
I'm not familiar with the woman who you referred to, but I have confidence in the career people at the FBI and the other investigative agencies to conduct a thorough, comprehensive investigation, and that's what I would expect of them. And that is why matters like this take as long as they do.
Well, would you please, in conclusion, I know my time's up, would you please commit here to me and publicly to contact Catherine Engelbrecht and to get her side of the story? Or have somebody on your staff do so?
The determinations as to who gets interviewed will be made by the career people who are conducting the investigation. As you have said, and I don't want to cast any doubt on what you have said, she seems like a logical person to talk to on the basis of what you've said. I don't have any independent knowledge of what her involvement is or what her organization is about. But that is something that I would leave to the people who are, as I said, career professionals to make determinations as to who needs to be interviewed.
Well, I hope the department would talk to the victim.
I want to thank the Attorney General for the good work he does. I know he is aided with great skill by two former Schumer employees who work for you, Elliot Williams, who's been gone for a while, and Brian Fallon, who we miss very much and is doing a good job for you. That's our comment.
Thank you, Senator Schumer.
Okay.
Emails indicated the organizations needed to be pulled because the IRS employees were not sure how to process them, not because they wanted to stall or hinder the application. There was no indication that pulling these selected emails, these selected applications, were politically motivated. I repeat, there was no indication that pulling these selected applications were politically motivated. I ask that this be inserted in the record.
Without objection.
So, Mr.
Would
Chairman,
the gentleman yield for a moment?
yes.
I want to emphasize that this committee's investigation is not complete. And the purpose of all of this inquiry with the commissioner today is to get his assurances that he will provide the documents that we've requested to complete this investigation, and then we'll come up with conclusions. I think it's in the interest of every member of this committee, regardless of their party affiliation, to get to the bottom of this based on the facts.
All right, so, look, just ask him, will you supply the information? Don't veer off in trying to revive a position that has not been supported one iota. One iota. And it's clear you're trying to keep this issue alive for political purposes. This statement from the deputy says there was no political motivation, and there never has been a scintilla of evidence. And so now the commissioner comes here, a new commissioner, when we should try to get off on the right foot, on a constructive foot, and what happens? You confront him with emails. He wasn't involved, and emails that tried to resurrect an issue that is not supported, Mr. Chairman. If you want to have a constructive, cooperative, bipartisan effort, do so. But don't use this hearing as an effort to essentially pursue a political purpose. So I ask you, and I'll finish, to the director, are you willing to cooperate fully with this committee?
I am, and look forward, as I said earlier, to that cooperation.
Thank you.
I thank the gentleman. I welcome the commissioner's commitment, and I want to just simply emphasize that there are a number of outstanding requests that have not been met. And so we welcome the commitment on the part of the commissioner to expedite this process and to meet the demands of the committee so that we can complete this investigation. I mean, we clearly have documentation that a number of the frontline workers were doing their work appropriately, and that the confusion set in only after there was some intervention by Washington. So we just want to get to the bottom of this.
I don't think
and to
the
get the
evidence shows
information
that.
will be necessary to do so. I now yield to Ms. Black.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Commissioner, welcome to our committee. We appreciate your being here. We understand that there are some questions that you can't answer. I'm going to try to ask you some questions that maybe you could help clear up about some things that we did see that occurred that are not only a concern of this committee but also the American people. I want to follow up on two things that you answered questions for Chairman Bastani. One, you said there were 6 ongoing investigations. Was I correct in what I heard, that there are 6 investigations?
It's my understanding that there is an investigation going on by the Senate Finance Committee, the Senate Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations, this committee, the House Oversight Committee, the Justice Department, and the FBI, and the Inspector General, and I think that adds up to 6.
And at this point in time, none of these investigations have offered a report, have completed a report. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. I'm not aware of any of those either, and I thank you for chronicling those investigations. So let me go back. Last year, our committee uncovered the existence of the IRS surveillance program called the Review of Operations that was used to keep tabs on organizations that are approved. They've already been approved for their tax-exempt status. And the committee is in possession of emails, and I'm not going to ask you to weigh opinion on those emails that you have not seen, but in which high-ranking IRS officials said, and I quote, "We suspect we will have to approve the majority of the C4 applications," close quote, but they would also, and quote, "refer these organizations to the review of operations for follow-up in a later year." This was a period in the summer of 2012 where the IRS had a lot of applications that they were approving, certain applications for the 501c status in response to congressional pressure and also the commencement of TIGTA's investigation. So to be clear, the IRS employee was saying that they would approve the applications but subject them to later future surveillance. Not surprisingly, our investigation also discovered of groups that were referred to this surveillance, 83% were right-leaning. And after the committee discovered the practice, the IRS quickly suspended it, saying that, and I quote, referrals were being returned to EO determinations for further review to ensure they were appropriate. So moving forward and looking at the current status, where is the status of this surveillance program now?
My understanding is there is not a, quote, surveillance program in existence. As I think all of you understand, determinations are made at the front end for all 501c3 applicants. Last year we had 80,000 applicants for 501c status of one kind or another, the bulk of them for C3 status. Everyone who is determined and passes through that hurdle and gets a certification to be a 501c3, 4, 5, 6, or 7, then goes out and does their work. And it's an obligation of the IRS over the course of time to review those activities to determine that they are in fact doing what they said they were going to do when they were given 501c status. Most of those oversight reviews are for 501c3s because they are the most voluminous. The number of 501c4 applications is overall is probably 4 or 5% of the applications we get every year. So 95% of the work that goes on has nothing to do with C4s. And the C4 applications are spread around a lot of activities. There are garden clubs. There are a lot of other social welfare activities in that pool. All of them are subject to review.
If I could reclaim my time because I've got a red light. I just want to be assured that none of those applications that were in that ROO are in that category, and they've all been released, and that's all been taken care of.
That's been taken care of, but I would stress that every organization that has a 501c determination over time will be reviewed because that's an obligation of the IRS to make sure that people are in fact performing in their 501c exempt status as they said they were going to, whether they're a charitable organization or a political organization or a social welfare organization. 5 years out, it's important for the public to be confident that they're still doing what they said they were going to do in the application process.